Hey everyone, this is Ultra Runner. Welcome back to the channel. Today I just want to talk to you guys about collecting and as far as how it impacts our lives, not just from picking up our favorite piece and going on a nostalgia trip, but really along the lines of how it actually affects us as we collect and what we do to collect. And I made a comment, and I make this comment, a lot of times in my videos as far as, I want my collections to live with me, not live with my collection. So what I mean by that is I don't have my collection in a room that's built with a bunch of cabinets and, fancy module cases and things like that, where my collection is just really my office and it's built around my work life and my family life. So I've got, my desk here. I think I showed you guys a couple times. I actually had to get rid of my Odyssey monitor. It just wouldn't work with my setup. So, but I've got I've got a really large desk. It's like 32 by 68 or something like that, 65. But in that room, I've got, like I said, just posters on the wall. I've got some action figures, and you guys know my Transformers collection isn't in here. That's in a separate area, but it's in my closet, where I typically see it a couple times a day. But for the most part, a lot of our collections, we're not looking at that stuff all the time. But what I've noticed is a lot of collectors will have a room dedicated to their collecting, and that room is a bunch of big cabinets in there, a lot of artificial light and things like that. And a lot of collectors don't seem to be happy. I actually watched a video the other day talking about how lonely collecting is if you're a collector, and how you're just in your room with your stuff. And you have friends that appreciate it for the most part, when they come out to visit, but for the most part it's just you sitting in your room and hanging out. And I was talking to one of my subscribers, telling them how my collection is, like I say, I don't want to live my collection. I want my collection to live in me. So I have sunlight coming directly into my room, and how important that is, because right now what I'm showing you guys is my room right now with just sunlight. I've got my desk lamps on, so I've got two, and I've got those turned down to about 40%. I run my lights the warm white, so it's kind of a yellowish look, and I've got Govee underneath, and that's just underneath my desk and behind the back of my desk, just for backlighting. Of course, it's better for your eyes when you're reading, and I do a lot of, since I work from home. But for the most part, like I say, it's not that pure bright white that you use that's super clean. It's a warmer white, which is really great for your eyes and more closer to sunlight. It's actually really close to the light that's coming in this window here, and this window is not really large; it's a standard size window, but I can see my collection very well. I'm not just being flooded with artificial light. And as we know, sunlight is good for us, mentally, psychologically. Seeing the sun helps us a lot. Having natural light come in helps us a lot. I know a lot of us, we spend time in our collection room, but, would you spend more time in your collection room if it was I don't say livable room that actually had sunlight in it and bright? Like I've got my door open. My door is open typically all day long, mainly because I got a pull-up bar there. But I only have to close it usually a few times during the week if the kids are getting a little too loud, during the summertime. But once time starts, I'm typically not the door's not closed. Oh, I didn't realize I didn't have my matrix on. I'm gonna turn this on real quick. That thing is actually super cool. I just got that. Right now, that's kind of where it's going to sit until I figure out where it's going to go. But I think I actually like it there, because that's when I have my Schumacher car, and now my Schumacher car is over here. But yeah, so just wanted to kind of talk to you guys about how many of you guys are out there designing your collection rooms, like a lot of some of the bigger YouTubers who are sponsored by Module Case, or trying to be sponsored by Module Case, or they're going out and buying these big old cabinets they put in these rooms in their basements. I know a lot of times, a lot of people might not have an option like me to have it in a room that's above ground. But the main thing is, if your collecting is making you unhappy because you're going from you're in an area where you can enjoy it, and in this prime area, in a prime space with prime lighting and things like that, but psychologically it's weighing on you, then you might want to look at just changing how you collect. So maybe the collection goes from being a really big collection in your basement, or like with my Transformers, I have it in a separate area that I go in and check out from time to time, but I'm not spending time in my closet. So, and I will be pulling some out here, but also I didn't want to have this room overrun. I don't want my collection to be the primary focus for how I live my life. I want to basically be able to do whatever I want, enjoy, sunlight, and again, and I do make some provision. So one of the things I'll tell you here about the sunlight coming in is my house faces east and west. So I don't really get direct sunlight in my house. Now, usually in the late fall, the sun will set at an angle. So like this Boba Fett on my desk will get some sunlight back on his back. And then so will Ken in June. But it's only for maybe about 30 to 45 minutes, and it's not that big a deal, honestly. None of them got any discoloration on them from facing that way, and neither does he, at all. So the other thing too is everything I have in here that get sunlight on it. Like let's look at my comics, which I think are definitely more valuable than my 6-scale characters. Those are all behind UV plexi, so which is why they're super reflective. I'm actually looking to replace them right now with some anti-glare glass that's UV rated, but that stuff is kind of expensive, so I'm just kind of looking to find some options before I start going and picking out custom glass. But the one thing you'll notice here, again, I've got all my lighting off. So, with the exception of course, because I have a separate switch that turns on like the lightsabers and things like that. The matrices, they're all hard powered off. But if I want to turn everything off, they all go off by themselves. I'll go off at one time. Same thing over here. That all comes on at one time. Then if I want to turn those lights on separately, and all the lights that come on are all warm lighting. And that warm lighting does help you. You think about years and years ago where we were sitting under fluorescent lights in offices when you worked in an office. So many studies were showing how that plays in your brain, how it affects you mentally. A lot of people were suffering from depression and things like that. And what I've noticed is a lot of collectors are basically building their own enclosed, cave, and you're spending a lot of time there away from natural sunlight. Even if your family comes in and out there, which a lot of times, a lot of these collection rooms, like some of these bigger YouTubers, they don't even have seating area in there. It's just a room they just go in, almost like a museum. But if you really wanted to spend time and enjoy your collection, is it in an area where you can technically enjoy it, not just by yourself, but with others? Is there one chair in there and then a desk, and then you're streaming, if you guys are starting to do YouTube, or is it an area where you're not starting to do YouTube and it's just an area where it's just you in a chair, or you in a couple chairs, and you're just in that room, by yourself for the most part, checking out your collection, maybe playing around with stuff, shifting stuff around. Like me, time to time, I'll get up and change a pose, adjust the figure, things like that. But for the most part, are you collecting in a healthy manner? And if you are, that's pretty much what you want to do. You don't really want to be in a situation where these collections are not necessarily ruining your life, but forcing you to be in a situation that's really not healthy for you long term. Because if it is, then eventually you're going to get out of it, or maybe you'll fall out of love with it because you just are tired of being in the situation you're in and not really being able to nail it down. And until you figure out, okay, well, it's because I'm sitting here in a dark room full of artificial light and by myself, as opposed to maybe having it upstairs in a small area where you can actually have, the family nearby. Maybe you have, tons of sunlight coming in. Like, so I have my collection upstairs in my bedroom, which has like 3 big windows in it. and it was cool to have it up there. But when I really needed more privacy for work, I ended up having to move down here to this spare bedroom. And yeah, it definitely has worked out because I can do kind of whatever I want. I can make my collection my own. And then if I, wanted to make any adjustments to how things look and things like that, it's not really interfering with anybody else. So, but yeah, and as far as, our collecting headspace, a lot of us are, we get so wrapped up into this as far as like, not really even like going from piece to piece. Because I know as collectors, we're always looking for something new. We're looking for the new greatest thing. It's never a permanent situation where you're locked into what you have. I think at some point, a lot of us will get to like an in-game situation, but, I'm not even really talking about it from the financial standpoint because that's a whole other discussion, but just how collecting can mentally affect us and making sure that we are looking at a lot of those other aspects that can lead into collecting being negative and going into depression and things like that because of something that is supposed to be fun, because this should be fun, it should be cool, it should be stress-free. Maybe the most stress you have is like, oh, can I get into the queue to pick this up? Not, hey, sitting in this room, I have to sit in this room for 3 hours a day to make sure that the money I'm spending is worth it. And that never should be the case. If you're not doing what you can to make sure that you're being healthy with your collecting, then you probably want to reevaluate that, or you might want to just stop and realize, hey, this maybe not be the best thing for you to get you situated. But the first thing I would definitely say is, if you can, get your room with some light. Natural light coming in. Natural light coming in is massive for just how you feel, how you operate, how we function. Like I say, our brains love it. It's good for our psyche. Again, like I say, I mentioned before, if they throw you into solitary confinement, the whole point is to put you in somewhere where you don't get sunlight because it's punishment. Our brains don't like that. It doesn't function well. So, and I know a lot of us are like, oh, hey, I'll just get out and, I'll maybe work from home in an area like this that's completely closed in, no windows, a basement, but I'll go outside from time to time. But it's a little different than just seeing sunlight the entire day or having outdoor exposure the entire day from a window like that. Of course, because sometimes it does rain, but for the most part, just ensuring that natural light is coming in, because we do feed off of that as people. And we want to make sure that, again, we're doing what we can to ensure that our mental state is most important in this collecting. Again, I said my motto is I want my collection to live in me, not me live in my collection. And the summary of that is, I don't want to build a room for my collection. I want my collection to exist in an area that I can function in normally and in a healthy manner. And, for everybody that's different, but I think some of the basics for us as humans are all the same. Those who put themselves and box themselves into, rooms where they have no sunlight and things like that. From a mental standpoint, we pretty much all function around the same way in a case like that. You throw us in solitary confinement, we're all going to function pretty much the same way. Yes, there's always outliers, but for us as a collecting community, we are typically people who like to share our collections and share our time and share our thoughts and, hang out with each other, whether it's in person, online, and just want to make sure that we're looking at that from that standpoint of collecting can put you in a situation where you're not, I don't want to say building a coffin because that sounds very, very dark, but you're boxing yourself into an area that can at some point be an area where you start to not necessarily just regret it, but also you start to have issues with the fact that it's now taking over your life, and you become resentful of your collection, and at some point it may have to go, because that's the only way you can free yourself and get out of the situation you're in. But if you're not, and if you don't want to get to that point, I would definitely suggest a couple things. One, sunlight if possible. Another thing that you can do, of course, as well, is make sure that you're getting as much time outside of that area as you can. And then, of course, making sure that your most important thing is not your collection. Your most important thing is you being happy and getting things you want. And sometimes that's not getting everything you want. Sometimes just picking up a few things here and there. Because I mean, I know if we had unlimited money and unlimited space, which are definitely limited, a lot of us would probably go way harder than we do. But and there's a couple of things we can talk about too, and I'll probably address those at a different point. But I just want to start with the main thing. It's like, hey, are you getting light into your room? Can you get light into your room? Can you get light into your collecting area? The figures, like I said, some may degrade over time, because of their sunlight. But at the end of the day, are we speeding up the process? I mean, a lot of these figures are going to degrade regardless. But are you more worried about a figure degrading because of the sunlight, or are you more concerned about your own mental health? So, but it's just things like that I just want to kind of talk through. And just kind of let me know you guys' comments, comment down below, let me know your thoughts on the situation. Is it something you even think about, or is it something that you kind of go, hey, I'd rather, if I'm going to spend $5, $8, $10, $20,000 on collectibles, I want to make sure they're good and I can make adjustments. Or do you take that into consideration when you do that? Are you following some of the pack where they have these massive rooms that they just treat like museums, or they sit in and stream from, and it's one chair and just them and their stuff? Or are you looking to do something different that's going to ensure that you keep as sane as you possibly can, and make sure your mental health and your how you feel personally is the most important aspect in your collecting. So, but let me know, comment down below. Appreciate you guys' time. Thanks for hanging out. Later.